Thanks for downloading this episode from Teachers Talk Radio. You can find the full schedule and listen back to all our shows at ttradio.org. Enjoy the podcast.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Don't miss out. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order. Happy reading.
Introducing Reading Solutions UK. Home to Dreambox Reading Plus, the online reading development programme, improving outcomes for students and schools nationwide. Create stronger readers in your school from Key Stage 2 to beyond GCSE, using Reading Plus's evidence-based adaptive technology. Reading Plus accurately assesses your students' skills gaps and places them on a personalised learning pathway, built to accelerate their strengths and improve on their areas for development. You can try the programme with a free 4-week pilot today. Search Reading Solutions UK to find their website and request your free pilot today.
How can you show your students the opportunities that await them? How can you fuel their aspirations and motivate them to achieve? Futurum Careers provides a wealth of stimulating resources aimed at encouraging 14 to 19-year-olds to pursue careers in STEM and SHAPE. We help you to show your students what they can aim for and how. From articles to activity sheets, animations to podcasts, all our resources align with Gatsby benchmarks and are free for you and your students to download. Visit futurumcareers.com and subscribe today. Futurum Careers, helping teachers to inspire the next generation.
Get set for the year ahead with the Bloomsbury Education Back to School sale. Save 30% on all Bloomsbury education books until 30th September. From the very best in research-led practice to trusted advice on inclusivity, behaviour and curriculum design, we've got something for everyone. Visit bloomsbury.com/B2S sale to shop now and save 30%. Bloomsbury Education, books for every step of your teaching journey.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our new Tuesday night show with me and Lucy, which we are loving. And we've got a treat for you tonight. We're going to fully kind of let loose and have a good old educational rant tonight. But before we do, a big thank you to our sponsors. We've got Futurum Careers, who I did a great show with Tom a couple of weeks ago. So if you want to know more about them, go and have a little look and a watch back at that show and go check out all their amazing resources. So they provide a wealth of stimulating resources aimed at encouraging 14 to 19-year-olds to pursue a career in STEM and SHAPE. They help teachers to show their students what they can aim for and how. Articles to activity sheets, animations and to podcast, all the resources aligns with the Gatsby benchmark and are free to download. So visit futurumcareers.com and subscribe today.
Fabulous. And good evening, EduFolk. I'm here alongside Hannah as well. And just to let you know that we also have another sponsor, our lovely John Catt Educational, who are still sticking with us. Unfortunately, the banner is covering Hannah up at the moment. She's still trying to learn to point the right way. We still can't quite get that right. But we still have a lovely 20% discount for you, which is JCTTR2425. 20% off of the whole range. Do go and treat yourself. I know I say it all the time, but it's still there. We might not have it forever. So make use of it while we still have it. Go to johncattbookshop.com, have a browse through. There is such a wide selection covering all areas of education. And so make that discount work hard. Okay. So when Hannah and I were talking about this show, the excitement is quite high on this one. I mean, is excitement the right word? Yes, because passion, yes, because we are both women in education. There is always a lot going on with this topic. And we have given Tom Rogers a bit of a heart attack and decided that we're just going to go for it on this show. There is a lot of different aspects to cover. a lot of different areas. But we just want to talk about, women discrimination within the educational sphere, and also we're very keen to hear from those of you listening in or watching as well. Please share your thoughts and go on this journey with us for the next sort of 90 minutes or so, and we're going to see where we end up. So, without further ado,
we were thinking about topics, weren't we? And I know we've kind of hit across this over the last few weeks. You've had a rant on Weekly Review about kind of being a woman in the classroom and children kind of treating you differently. I've also seen in the news there's a head teacher not far away from me that's gone to jail for harassing an ECT. And also the thing that shocked me the most this week, which has kind of triggered this, but not to do with teaching, was the poor lady that has gone to court over being drugged and raped at the direction of her husband. And for me, it was really shocking because the types of men that were doing this, there was lawyers, police, I think there were people in education. So it was just a real range of men that were doing it. But the other thing that was really shocking, of all the people he asked to do this to his wife, only 30% of the men said no. And none of them reported that they'd been approached and asked this. And it made me just feel like we do this thing of kind of, it's not all men, but I'm like, but why are we still having to deal with this? Why are things like this still happening? And how can we make society kind of better and it all be the same? And it made me really kind of think, like, what other areas is it that we are just ignored and we are not taken seriously? We are just kind of thought of as an object or turned a blind eye to the way that we are treated as women. And it made me kind of think about that in the educational kind of workplace and in that respect. So that is kind of how we've come here from. Like, that story just really made me feel quite sick to my core. And same as there's somebody I follow as well, and somebody had written something really horrible on her public Instagram, and she was like, right, I think it was something like really, really rude. I can't even repeat it. It was so rude, in fact. And she did a bit of digging. So she found him on Facebook, because there actually isn't as much kind of hidden away on Facebook, and then managed to get his full name, then found him on LinkedIn, and actually he worked for the NHS for vulnerable women, but yet was saying absolutely vile things to people in kind of public settings. And I'm like, they live among us. These men live among us. And I think especially for me, knowing that this teacher that was kind of thought in a really high regard as being like really prominent and having a really successful school, was quite often in the media for having a successful school, has gone to jail for harassing an ECT. So these people are in our workplaces, they are around, but it goes beyond that as well. And it's that not only should those things not be happening, but it's the rest of it that isn't equal either.
No, I mean, there's an enormous bystander effect going on here. And I think it was, I reference everything through comedy, which is dark and weird, and maybe I should see somebody about that. But I think it was Daniel Sloss, who is a Scottish comedian, who talked in one of his many shows that he's done about if one man is the culprit, or if kind of, a 9 out of the 10 just stand there, then you're still part of the problem. You're not, if you're just going, well, I'm not doing it, therefore, or I'm not saying anything, or I'm not doing, I'm not the one committing the be it a crime, be it, saying something inappropriate, whatever it is. But if I'm not kind of having a chat to my boys or having a chat to the men, and instead of saying, hang on a minute, actually we need to approach this differently, then it's as good as, well, it's no good, is it? But we have to be a little bit mindful here that this is not a man-hating sort of escapade that we are going on here, but it is sort of putting things under the microscope a little bit and understanding kind of why we still are where we are. Because I often say to female friends of mine, now more than ever is the greatest time to be a woman, be it in the workplace, be it in life, but we still have so much to do, and there are still huge disparities, which we're going to talk about, in various things. And there's still, safety, psychological safety in the workplace and in general is still a huge, huge issue. And it's not being addressed? Because I know that we both went down a bit of a research rabbit hole. And although some of the sort of data and information we found goes back a few years, but we've also established that not a lot has changed.
It
So,
is quite a scary one. Where do you want to start? Should we?
oh, I don't know. I mean, I suppose. I mean, do we sort of start with day to day, or do we sort of start with the at the extreme end here? I suppose.
Should we go? Should we look at pay? Let's start with there.
Let's start with pay.
So, like, I mean, Schools Week wrote about this. It was quite a while ago. I think I want to say it was 2019 that this article came up. But I have looked at kind of more recent ones for specific trusts, and it has decreased, but there still is quite a large gap in it. So this was published by Schools Week back in like kind of 2018. It was looking at the data. So obviously the data at the moment is just coming out for kind of 22, 23, so it's not quite up to date. But like, it is insane with the fact the average pay gap across all of the 147 of the academy trusts which submitted their data, because obviously now that schools, if you have, because now they're all in big academies, if you've got over 250 or more employees, you have to now submit this. So it is a legal document that anybody can get hold of. And it's works out that it was a gap of 31.7%, which is huge, which equates to, so the government statistics do not state what the average salary is in any business, but at this rate, the average rate from pay for a male employee with £50,000 a year, where women would just earn £26,350. So it's just insane, the large gaps. I know they have increased somewhat, and they kind of, in here, some of the bigger trusts back then were around kind of that 50% mark, with the lowest one being around kind of 7%. But actually that was only one trust. The next ones up were instantly up to kind of 17, 18, with the majority of these larger trusts kind of over 20% gap between males to females. And looking at some of them so far that I've looked at recently for kind of the data that's coming out at the moment, they're still kind of over 16% up to kind of like 30%. So it's still quite a big gap when we think these things should be going on, especially when we are really a profession quite full of women. That how is this gap so big is a really scary thought as well.
And especially when you take into consideration that, you know, we do have pay scales and things in place. So what's happening here?
I mean, I've got a story. So, like, I do genuinely feel like I have been disadvantaged in teaching as a woman. Like, I feel that and we have that thing, we'll get on to kind of going for jobs, but generally teachers, women won't go for a job unless they tick 90% of the criteria on a job advert, where men will go for it if they hit like 10%, but feel like they could achieve the rest. So,
Have you
but
seen
women
that
won't apply
meme
to much
that says-
later.
Have you seen that? I think it's a meme, or it's something that floats around the internet periodically, and I'm probably going to get absolutely chastised for this. But there's a meme that says, you know, approach every day with the confidence of a mediocre middle-aged white man.
Yeah.
And that just, you know, that just goes to prove, doesn't it, that, you know, the confidence, I mean, the confidence to sort of be like, oh, well, you know, I tick a few boxes, whereas we're far more sort of fastidious when we kind of, you know, I know that when I've written statements for jobs, as we have to in teaching, you know, where you kind of think, okay, how do I fit? And you absolutely, you know, the minute detail. Certainly when I was applying for international jobs, the number of sort of statements and rewrites and things that I did, and I rewrote it for every school as well. Ludicrous amount of energy.
It is.
Sorry.
And we just, I feel like we won't apply for things anyway. So when we do get there, we know that we can do it, whereas men won't apply not having those skills yet. So therefore, I feel there's that issue as well, that actually we're more qualified than what we should be for the jobs that we're doing, because we're not getting the opportunities. But we'll go on to that whole interview process and that bit later. But I went for an interview, and I got into teaching very weirdly. So I did my master's and then became an instructor. So I was an instructor for a couple of years covering maternity leave. So I got one job, and then the next teacher got pregnant, so I stayed and covered that one. And then the first teacher got pregnant again. They asked me to stay, but I did my teacher training at the same time. So I worked full timetable Monday to Thursday, and then went and did my course on a Friday and was qualified. So I had 3 years of being an unqualified teacher. I naively, nobody else would get pregnant, had to leave, went to a new school. I did not know to negotiate pay in an interview. I did not know that was a thing. I presumed I qualified, I would now go up onto the main pay scale. I presumed that would be more than what I was on as an instructor.
Logic would dictate, would it not?
Logic would sit. I did not know that I could negotiate myself up multiple bands for the fact that I'd already done 3 years experience. Nobody told me that, and the school did not offer that. And I feel like actually, as well, the top levels need to take responsibility. It's not like, oh, they didn't ask for that, we got away with that. Actually,
don't ask, don't
you're
tell.
worth this is what I'll pay you. So I didn't get that. Anyway, I stayed that for many years. I then left and got another job. And there's two folds to this. I got the job very late in the day because of just the way it was advertised and when the interview was. So the person that was at my school was doing in their teacher training, then took my job because it was last minute and negotiated themselves up several bands with no experience and was a man. When I went to the new school, I asked, could I go up a couple of bands? Because I have actually been an instructor for 3 years and then I've been a teacher for 3 years. So I'm 6 years in, but I'm only on, I think I was on like M4 then, M3 then. So I wasn't like very high up the band, but I was 6 years in. So I was like, can I jump up a couple so I'm getting my actual pay? And I was told, no, it's performance related pay. We don't know how you perform. So I was like, fine, I will go and improve myself. I went in. The progress 8 for my department was minus 1.14. Within a year, I got it to plus 0.86 and then went to them, look at how well I've performed. Not only have I rewritten every scheme of work for the whole entire school, in my own time with no time off timetable, every lesson is planned for the whole entire school, all from scratch, everything's in there, and I've turned the department around, look at the progress 8 schools, look at the hard work I've done and all the interventions. Will you now jump me up too so I'm getting paid for the amount that I should be for how long I've been teaching? And the answer was no, we don't want to set a precedent that people think we would just jump them up too. I was like, but it's performance rated pay and I've been teaching for that long. And I actually went and asked some staff and everyone was like, no, I'm shocked that you're on that low. I would not have a problem with your experience and how much you outperformed every other department in the school if you went up too. So I was purely told, no, that wasn't a done thing. They wouldn't listen. It wouldn't happen. Anyway, fast forward few years. I was then on a panel to interview somebody. They, in that interview, even though they were not very good, we had a very poor range of candidates to the point where they were like, right, we'll offer them a 1-year contract and see how they go. They didn't want to commit to this person. But that person went, can I go up 2 pay bands because of X, Y, and Z experience? And even in the interview, without even discussing it, yeah, no problem. And I literally, my jaw did hit the ground. I was like, I asked, and then I performed, and then I asked, and it was still no. But yet this man, who we've clearly discovered is not overly qualified for this role because we're only giving him a 1-year contract because we're a little bit worried at how he's going to perform. And you've gone yes straight away because he's a man and he's asked in the interview. And you know, if you say no, then you don't have anyone for that position. And it's really insulting as a woman with the experience, with the clout, showing everything that I'm capable of, to not be valued in that way. And I think these are the issues, is that it is kind of generally men in those higher positions and they just don't value it and they think we'll just take it on the chin, we're not going to argue, we'll just accept it. And I just don't think it's right.
No, we're often sort of, smile, and it's kind of eyes and teeth, isn't it? And just, play nicely and don't rock the boat. It's all kind of, just kind of just get on with it. And it's sort of all a bit, we'll just kind of and it's not great. And this kind of feeds into the promotion side of things as well. I mean, I've only ever gone for one promotion and I was the only person, and I actually got the role, ended up turning it down for a multitude of reasons. But I do often wonder, had I gone up against a male member of staff, or had I had to duke it out in any way, whether that would have been problematic or not. And I've certainly been in schools where I've seen when there was a sort of a battle for the deputy headship, and all of us thought that the woman that had gone for it was going to get it, because on paper, and certainly from what we knew of her, that was the right call. But because and I'm going to be a little bit crass here, but because the male member of staff had kissed a lot of ass, sorry, but he had, and had kind of, sort of somehow wormed his way in, he got the job. And I still am baffled to this day as to how that was A, allowed to happen, and how B, as far as I'm aware, he is still in this particular role, is extraordinary to me. And that's, again, it was a man doing the hiring, so make of that what you will. But she ended up leaving and is now a deputy head teacher somewhere else, because someone else saw in her what this particular school didn't, and good for them, because they've gained an asset in that respect. But this whole kind of promotion side of things as well. And I think there's a lot that feeds into this, because we're both in our 30s, we're at the kind of, so I suppose, sort of, this is the time, isn't it? And the reason I'm holding my phone is because I've got an article I want to raise. That's why I'm kind of waving it around. But also, women in their sort of late 20s, 30s, 40s, there's other factors. And I know that this is going to come up as well. There's, we might be getting married, having families. And as much as we think, that's not going to be a problem, I'll just come back after maternity leave and everything will be fine. Well, I mean, Hannah, I'm sure you've got stories of your own kind of related to that. But there was also an article I found, and this is by Emma Shepherd and Gemma Campbell. This was published last year, and it's actually called We're on a Road to Nowhere, Women aged 30 to 39, Why They Are the Largest Demographic to Leave the Profession. And just the kind of main points coming out of this. Well, one was career stagnation and lack of progression, which is what we've talked about. They experience a sense of stagnation due to limited professional development opportunities and barriers within their schools, feeling of being stuck or trapped. And then the impact of maternity and family responsibilities. Maternity leave, reduced working hours and family responsibilities significantly impacts career progression. Women who return to teaching after maternity leave often find it difficult to advance due to both systemic and personal barriers, such as a lack of flexible working arrangements and the perception that they are less committed to a career advancement. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm going to go back to your interview thing first, because I've been in the same situation. I've been on a panel that's interviewed a head, and it was a woman and a man, and the women just nailed all the answers, had really good facts and figures that backed what she was saying. She knew her data, she knew her educational research. I was like so impressed by everything she said. And then the man, I felt, was just telling stories. They were good stories, but they were just stories. There wasn't anything behind it. There wasn't any evidence being submitted. Yeah, and then at the end they were like, "What did you think?" And I was like, "Well, she absolutely nailed it. She was amazing." They're like, "Oh no, we much preferred the other one." And it was like, were we in the same interview? And then it was really interesting because there was actually another teacher panel. So I was with SLT and just me, because I was on the teaching and learning panel. And there was another one which was just teachers. And again, they came out and went, "Oh my gosh, the woman was really impressive. She was really exciting. But they went for the man." And we're just like, but she had so much more evidence and she presented that. And that's the thing. I was like, and it almost scared me a little bit. I'm like, what more do I need to do as a woman to be able to present myself in these interviews? Because I can do everything I possibly can. And trust me, I do. We'll come to that one later. But like, how much more can I do to prove that I am qualified for this? Same as like I've got fellowship status. I've done my level 7 apprenticeship in senior leadership. I'm doing my MBA in leadership. I've got national subject lead. I've had data that is beyond any other subject in the whole entire school for multiple years. Like the amount I've got on my CV. But yet I've been beaten at interviews for heads of year by somebody a man that's been teaching for 3 years over me that's been teaching for 13, and with 9 years of middle leadership experience and successful middle leader experience with data and evidence and stuff behind that of
Sorry, I had a visceral reaction.
Can't get into school and working with kids that nobody else can work with. Like it's what more do we as women need to do to show that we are capable? I don't get it. And I don't know whether it is that actually can somebody please tell these people at the top that are hiring that a woman is going for that job, they can nail everything on that job description. They are not going to apply for anything if they cannot do it. We are so much more self-aware, I believe, that we know what we can do and what we can't do, and we will not even attempt something if we can't. We will not fly by the seat of our pants. We will genuinely know exactly what we're doing. But that is the the reason that people are leaving is because we know exactly what we're capable of. But even as people then will go, oh well, she's a mother, because people look at me and go, oh well, you're a single mother. Like, you're not going to be able to do this. You're not going to be able to give the time to that. You're not going to be able, you're going to have all these other things to do. It's like, no, it motivates me. I'm so much more capable. You should see me. I'm like, got so much more to give because I'm so fired up to be the best that I can be and do the best that I can do for my son. That does not mean that I'm incapable of doing a job because I'm a mother and a single mother. It's actually the complete opposite.
It's relevant.
And if
the
we
idea
ask
that we
part
use,
time, that's just actually saying we can give our best to that time. We don't want to give mediocre to full time. We want to give 100% to less and not lose ourselves in everything. But people don't see it as a weakness or that they're going to get less out of somebody. If somebody asks for part-time because they're a mother, it just means that you're going to get way more out of them 4 days than you are 5. And you've got to be flexible for that.
but that's it. And this idea that, you know, we're copying, you know, by asking for kind of flexibility or asking for kind of you know, some grace in certain areas, that doesn't mean we're any less capable of doing the job. It doesn't mean that we're weaker in any way. And I think it is, and I hate to say it, and I hate to use the word weak and weakness and refer to it as that, but that's what it's perceived as. It's perceived that, you know, because at the end of the day, you then go home and look after your family, parents, single parent, it doesn't matter. That's your personal life. That's that's not to this. You know, what you do between the hours of whenever you turn up at school, call it 8 to 8 to 5 or whatever it is, you know, you are, I know, as again going for that job, I know that if I'm going for that job, that's what I'm committing to. I'm acutely aware of what that entails. I'm acutely aware of what your vision is as a school. I'm acutely aware of you know, who everybody, you know, who some people are, maybe not everybody, but I will have done my homework on the people as well. And, you know, I'd have scoured that school website. Actually, I probably, back when I was still in the UK, I would have gone around to have a look. I'd have gone to have a look, and I'd have gone and, you know, things like that, you know, the kind of the attention to detail that I don't necessarily see from the man's side. And I'm not saying it doesn't happen. There's every chance that it does. But, you know, these are the things we think about, you know, and take time out. And it is, you know, to go and look at a school, to go and kind of get a feel for it, it's bloody awkward when you are already in a full-time job. You know, you're not getting time off to do that. You're kind of having to, you know, either tell the truth or not.
And it is, my male friends, I'm sure they won't mind me saying this, male teacher friends, quite often I hear them go, oh, I just bunged in a last minute application. Like, and I'm like, did you not like plan or read or go visit the school? Nah, and they still always end up with interviews. I'm just like, how? Like, if I do an application, I'm spending like 6 hours, like filling in forms, readapting personal. Oh, I just bunged in an old one, and they'll just get an interview. But I don't know, and maybe that's me jaded. I just think, like, I see a lot of I've got friends that have, like, female, that have been in education a long time, that are so capable, so able, so strong at what they do, and that have just taken a really long time to go into leadership. But I've seen, like, I know, like, somebody that took over my position on my maternity leave and then locked me out of all of my own resources that I wrote, and then claimed them all as his own. But then, like a couple of years later, was assistant head. And I was like, God, I've been teaching so much longer than you, and you're already an assistant head. And because you've used the experience of doing my maternity cover of a middle leader role. And it's just, I don't know. I just don't know how we even it out, because obviously the pay is obviously, we stop and we have children, we don't get paid as much. We don't go up the pay scale. I granted, my old trust, when I went on maternity leave, I went on paternity leave after Christmas. I waddled in on inset on the 4th of January on my due date to make sure that I didn't get deducted my 2 weeks pay over the holidays and start my maternity early. I got told to go home at inset in the lunchtime, so I didn't give birth during inset. But like prior to that, I
I
was at
think
work.
you can't shock me anymore, Hannah. You kind of every week we do this, and I know I say this every week. I get a story out of you, and to those of you listening and watching it, she didn't tell me that one beforehand. Like that was like that one I didn't know. So the idea that, you know, as someone who is about to give birth, to that your brain, so this again is strictly, you know, I do think a if the boot was on the other foot, could you imagine, as if that a man, you know, on his due date, if he were the one carrying the child, as if because it wouldn't occur to them.
And that's the thing, I was there till like 7 o'clock at night before, when I was 7 months pregnant, trying to make sure I was writing all my resources, make sure my cover was in place, make sure everything is done. And to be fair to him, my deputy, who was lovely and I adored, he used to come in and be like, you need to go home, I'm kicking you out, like stop working so hard. And when my son had complications and was really poorly, and I was like, no, I'm kind of come back in like May half term, I'm going to finish the half term out. And he was so ill, bless him, my son was in hospital for so long. He was literally like, just come back the last week. Like, we understand that you need to come back for the pay, but please don't rush it. And like, I think it's important that there are people at the top that kind of are doing that as well. But then I did that to myself. I was like, I feel like I have to do this. I feel like I have to leave everything in a really good place. I felt like people would judge me if I didn't do everything and have it all ready. If I just kind of off I go, I'm just going to leave it. I just didn't feel like I could do that. And I don't know, maybe that was just because I was still kind of only like 5 years into my teaching career that I kind of thought about that. But and respect to that trust as well. Like, there was a new school and they were setting it up, and they hired quite a lot of young women that had just got married, and we all went down like flies, including the head herself, who was due the week after me, but had her baby the week before. And we used to get the lift up because we're on the third floor, and neither of us could hack that walking 7 months pregnant. But it was like, but I guess that was having a female head. She was like, no, I'm not gonna not get really good, I'm going to call myself talented at that time, talented young women into this school because they're going to have babies. Like, I'm still going to hire them. We'll just deal with it when it comes in. And to be fair, we did spread them out. We were quite well behaved. But like,
But I've had situations in schools where I've had reports from colleagues of mine, female colleagues who've been pregnant, who have been told that they can't tell parents until a sort of certain point because, you know, you don't want to wind them up, don't want to sort of upset them, don't want to kind of, I'm just like, sorry, it's nothing to do with you. Like, if you want to tell them, you know, women get pregnant. Sorry, it happens. Your kid's going to be fine. They'll get supply in or cover or maternity cover or whatever it is, and you know, it really is not quite the end of the world, but it's sort of almost like oh well, you know, they're going to go off and get pregnant, they're going to kind of do this, or you know, and the jokes that are made as well, even actually by fellow female members of staff as well. It's not just men who make the jokes, say, oh, you know, now you're married, you're going to have a baby, or you know, you're going to kind of, and it's like, just why are you trying to, you know, my chair isn't even cold, like chill out.
it is that. And I just think like it shouldn't set us back as a career, and it shouldn't, because that's the thing, the pay gap. I'm like, because obviously I worked really hard for that term before I left to go on maternity leave, that when I came back and had my progress review in September, they were like, no, you ticked all of your objectives before you'd even left on maternity leave. So yes, of course we'll put you up on your pay progression. Like, you did all that. So I didn't miss out in that respect. But I know other teachers that have teachers that have taken the whole year out have then not progressed because they couldn't do their performance management or their classes haven't performed as well because they've had maternity cover and they haven't been as good. Like, those shouldn't be things that we're judging people that have gone on maternity for. So this gap I just don't understand how this gap is still so big, other than the fact that men that haven't been in the profession as long are jumping up higher positions and jumping up multiple pay bands in a quicker rate than what women are.
But I do think, you know, there is, I mean, the theme thus far let's call it what it is. There is an underlying misogyny. There is an underlying sort of, would I go as far as say anti-women? Maybe not quite that far, but there is and it's maybe not even underlying, but it's this is still alive and well. Like we're sitting here, in September 2024 talking about this, when we, as I said at the start, we like to think we've moved on. We like to think that we're doing better, but these stories are still coming out. This is still going on. This is still a huge problem. This is why we're having this conversation this evening, that certainly from this side of it, excuse me, women are still getting a short shrift. We're still getting, the rough end of it, because we're biologically different, and we are the ones that have to go off and have babies if we so choose to do that. But it's this sort of punishment for, or this kind of, you can't have it all. You can't have it all. Well, why not? Why not? There are plenty of people that make it work. So you're telling me that, I can't possibly do a good job at work because I've got a family, or because, I have other commitments outside of work. That seems ridiculous to me. And it's, it is ongoing, and I don't really know how. I mean, I suppose the only way to do better in this respect is to continue to call it out and continue to say, hey, I can do this. But I mean, you're proof that, you tried to do that, and still, despite everything, despite all your experience, despite all the accolades, despite everything, still getting overlooked. Because I think with a lot of these guys, these men that go for these interviews, they kind of carry it through on charisma, and it's kind of I'm going to use a bad turn of phrase here, but anyone can walk into a room and put on a bullshit production. They can. Anyone can walk into an interview and give it large. We've all done it, but there's kind of, talk is cheap. And of course, you can go in and give the interview of your life, but can you do the job? And often in teaching interviews, they do have to see us teach. But I wonder if, in some cases, they're not putting people through the same kind of interview process. Is it that shady at this point? I don't know. I mean,
there is a lot of internal, in-house kind of shifting around of people within trusts. I feel like it's not necessarily always externally advertised and given the appropriate opportunities to everyone. But then you say that I've had both experiences. So I've basically done everything, because I was always told, like when I went for stuff, I just don't have quite much experience. So I've been head of enrichment, curriculum enrichment, outreach, Vitae Days, PSHE. I've been head of all of that for the 3 years. I've been head of department. I've been national subject lead in charge of 46 schools, departments across the trust, run training for all of that. On top of that, I did my NPQ LT, because I was like, everyone keeps telling me, oh, you just don't quite have enough. So I did that. Then I did my level 7 apprenticeship in senior leadership. And on top of that, I've become a lovely host at Teachers Talk Radio, and become one of the directors here, and literally live and breathe teaching, like talk about teaching, get to interview amazing authors, get to read amazing educational books. And then I have an interview for a position that I am overly qualified for, and I'm asked whether I can do that job successfully, as well as doing the masters and as well as doing the podcast, when I had been doing it previously with a whole nother national role on top of that for 2 years, with the highest results continuously than any other department within my school. So like, either I'm not enough and I'm not qualified, or I can do all of that and then I'm criticized that I'm doing too much and I'm not going to be able to do the job properly because I'm doing too much. So it's like, I feel a bit as a woman like I can't win, and I can't be the only one that feels like this, like that we do the things, we tick the boxes, we're doing all the things to prove that we're just as qualified and that we can do these things. But then it's like, oh, well, you're overextended yourself, you're not going to be able to do it properly. And it's, I just feel like, what can I do? Because I'm sitting there with all the lovely, amazing education that I've gathered and all the information. And on those courses, I've got head teachers, executive head teachers. Like, I am literally surrounded by amazing talent that want to learn and want to know how to improve their schools. And I'm on the same course as them because I've got myself there and got myself interviewed and got myself qualified for it. And I'm like sitting there going, well, actually, I've learned that this is how this school should be run. You guys aren't using a pestle and actually understanding everything about your society and what's going on and all the contrasting things that can affect the school and your budget and everything else. I am so overqualified, and I could probably do the people that's interviewing me job at this point with how much qualification I've got, to then have the hypocrisy of being told that I'm doing too much and won't be able to do the job properly. It's just, it's insulting.
But then when you do eventually kind of get to the point where you kick off a bit, don't get emotional.
Yes.
Being oversensitive. Oh, no, we're not trying to upset you. And it's so patronizing and it's so condescending. And that's the bit that winds me up more than it, because I'm not even nowhere near as qualified as you are. But you do get I've ugly cried at various head teachers' bosses over various things over time. And it's, you just need to toughen up. Don't be so sensitive. Kind of, don't get emotional. It's an emotional job. And I'm sorry. The thing that pees me off more than anything, I've got to watch my language, but the thing that annoys me more than anything is I have known for a long time that the day I wake up and I have no emotional feelings towards teaching, it's just kind of whatever. That's the day I leave it alone forever. Yes, I'm on a sabbatical right now, but for me, there's still emotion attached to this job, this role. And I'm still kind of very much, still passionately talking about it now. But so for anyone, particularly a man, to say to me, don't get emotional. No, you don't get to say that to me. Sorry. And it really irritates me. And I have had it said to me. And it's just kind of like, this is an emotional job. And also, if you'd experienced the kind of constant beatdowns as you have, or the constant kind of no, or the constant kind of, well, you're just, and it's always done in this kind of voice, isn't it? And it's always sort of, no, I'm sorry, do better, be better, because otherwise you're gonna, and also the other thing is, do I think that the retention crisis is down to kind of the way women are treated? Not entirely, no, but I'm sure there is a large part of it where a lot of people like you might eventually go, or have eventually gone, sod it. I'd honestly rather go and, I don't know, privately tutor or whatever it is, because this is just not like, how hard do I have to fight? How hard do I have to, do I have to kick off? Do I have to lose my mind in a meeting? Do I have to be really undignified? Well, no, because if you do that, then you're definitely not getting anywhere. But then what choice do you have? At what point do you just go, stuff you all? I can't do this anymore.
And I think it's that I wonder how many women are leaving the profession and actually realizing they can work for themselves, set up their own businesses, their own online opportunities, and actually we are intelligent and we are capable, and I think sometimes we're made to feel like we're not, and actually we are. And actually, when you get that kind of liberation, that actually we're doing really well. But I'm very much the same. Like I do get emotional. There are times where I get very emotional, especially with teaching, and especially when it's out of the blue and I'm not expecting it and it's kind of pounced on me, I am going to get emotional because I wasn't expecting that. And also, I find confrontation very, very hard. For anybody that's listened to my previous shows, you're very aware that I am a domestic violence survivor. I've done a very, very old show talking all about it. So if you want to know more about language and how to deal with that and how to support colleagues and students for that matter, go and have a listen back in the archives to that one. But I had somebody at a school that I was working at that was really quite aggressive towards me, that I was trying to manage. And I'd done difficult conversation training with a national lead and gone through scripts and been trained how to deal with it. And another senior member of the trust came in and saw how she spoke to me and said, does she speak to you like that all the time? And I said, yes. And they said that was incredibly rude. And then it takes one to know one. They were like, you seem to really struggle with it. Have you been through that situation? I said, yes. And they were like, do the school know? And I said, well, yes, my line manager knows, but I'm not sure whether she's passed it up to the head. She's like, I will go speak to him. So she went and spoke to the head, said, Hannah has had this situation. I'm not sure whether you're aware that she has survived that, but this other teacher, and I have seen it in action, is so aggressive and rude. I think you need to do something about it. And he did diddly squat. And I raised it multiple times. I said about how it really triggered me. I found it really hard. I cried a lot because every time I went, I felt like I was having the same conversation over and over again, having to explain myself and what I've been through and why I found it hard that they were aggressive in that way. But they didn't do a single thing. They didn't say a single thing. Another teacher complained about somebody else and said that they had sent something, and it was literally, and that teacher had even been and apologized and said, I was just really tired. I haven't got a technician and I've been working through my lunch and break. I was just really tired. I didn't mean to snap. They'd been and apologized, but she got called into the head's office and said, why did you snap at that teacher? But they didn't even know that she'd been and apologized. But mine, that I repeatedly complained 4, 5, 6 times about the way I was being treated. I was just seen as emotional. Oh, it's because I was abused that I'm emotional and upset. It's not actually. And I was like, no, I've seen it. Somebody else has actually seen it and said it as well. And another person as well, after seeing it, also went and said, oh, it's verging on bullying now, the way that they're speaking. And still nothing was done. And I think it's when we are, but like, oh, well, she's just emotional. She's just emotional. Like, she'll get over it. She's emotional. If a man did the same thing and said those things, it would not have been treated in the same way, and that's not okay.
No, and I mean, thank you for sharing that, Hannah. And I know that you've shared before, but it's still a difficult thing to do. So I appreciate you sharing that with us and with the audience as well.
It's about 2 people in every school, based on statistics, that will be in a domestic violence situation out of the staff members. So it's like more common than people think.
Well, there you go.
And I don't think staff are equipped to deal with it, especially not at the top.
Oh no, certainly not. I mean, I've certainly had issues with fellow staff members, and when I've raised it, I have pretty much been laughed out the room. And it's oh yeah, you're just emotional. You'll get over it. Yeah, until it kind of, because at what point do you just have to get over it? Where is the pinch point? Where is the point where I'll say, oh gosh, maybe we should do something? Because it's again, it is that label of kind of, oh, you're overreacting, or oh, it's kind of, it's not that serious, or oh, it's kind of, it's like, well, hang on a minute. At what point are you going to take me seriously? At what point, what do I have to cry out, or do I have to basically kind of shut you in a room with me, get in your face and be like, this is what's happening. I need your support here, and I need you to do something. Because again, you just get a lot of kind of crappy responses, to be honest, and it isn't good. And I appreciate, and I do think it's a good point to put a caveat in and say, and I appreciate that there are head teachers, middle management out there who are doing their damnedest and who are being supportive and who are doing these things, but there's not enough of you. And that is painfully, painfully clear. I will also say that those of you, because there's about 921 of you currently watching and listening in. So if any of you have got any thoughts on any of this, do please comment, and we will read out what you have to say. This is we don't exist in a vacuum, and I'm sure that, given the number of you that are listening in, I am sure that there are people who have got thoughts and feelings on this.
Or if you want to do it anonymously and DM us over on Twitter, then we can do it that way as well, because we appreciate that it's a difficult topic. And that's the thing. I went to governors and I said, look, this has happened. I've not been supported, and still nothing happened. And I think that's the thing. Like, I just felt like there is nowhere else for me to go to get this support. I don't feel supported. I don't feel like I can do my job properly. And that's like, as well, really difficult as a woman when you feel like there is nobody backing me. And that's why it is like another problem, because there other teachers could see it and people had tried to back me and say, look, we can very clearly see it, but they were all women. It was all women going, we can see it happening. But like, you want the men there as well. And that's why I think we said that, like, we want men to listen to this and hear it and understand it, because I don't think it happens to them. Maybe I'm wrong, and maybe there will be different circumstances, but I don't think it happens on the scale that it happens. And actually, it needs to be the men calling out when they see it as well, in the school, in the classes, and saying, oh, actually, I don't think it's fair that. And I do know there's a man at my current school, when something happened, actually went to the head and went, I really, really respect you, but I don't respect this decision. I don't understand it when something happened. And I was like, actually, hats off to you. I really kind of commend that you went and actually did that. And actually, maybe if more people did that when they don't agree with situations, then actually maybe it would make people change their mind. Or it is one of those that actually, do we need to have a whole new criteria that goes in, that when interviews go into place, that these things are considered and that it's done on a more fair basis, that it's not just on how much waffle they managed to spill at that time. It's that the evidence and the background and things count, the hard work counts.
Oh, most definitely. Right. We are going to go to a quick ad break in a moment, but something for you to ponder, Hannah, because I had a question for you. Do you think that as female teachers, the parents treat us differently? This is a thought that occurred to me just as you were talking. So let's hear from our sponsors, and then I'm interested to know your thoughts on that one, because I too have some thoughts on that as
This
well.
show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Don't miss out. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order. Happy reading!
Introducing Reading Solutions UK, home to Dreambox Reading Plus, the online reading development program, improving outcomes for students and schools nationwide. Create stronger readers in your school from Key Stage 2 to beyond GCSE, using Reading Plus's evidence-based adaptive technology. Reading Plus accurately assesses your students' skills gaps and places them on a personalised learning pathway, built to accelerate their strengths and improve on their areas for development. You can try the program with a free 4-week pilot today. Search Reading Solutions UK to find their website and request your free pilot today.
How can you show your students the opportunities that await them? How can you fuel their aspirations and motivate them to achieve? Futurum Careers provides a wealth of stimulating resources aimed at encouraging 14 to 19-year-olds to pursue careers in STEM and SHAPE. We help you to show your students what they can aim for and how. From articles to activity sheets, animations to podcasts, all our resources align with Gatsby benchmarks and are free for you and your students to download. Visit futurumcareers.com and subscribe today. Futurum Careers, helping teachers to inspire the next generation.
Get set for the year ahead with the Bloomsbury Education Back to School sale. Save 30% on all Bloomsbury education books until 30th September. From the very best in research-led practice to trusted advice on inclusivity, behaviour and curriculum design, we've got something for everyone. Visit bloomsbury.com/B2S sale to shop now and save 30%. Bloomsbury Education, books for every step of your teaching journey.
Okay, not long at all to ponder on my question there, but I was thinking about parents' evenings, and I was thinking about, because I often, as you do, talk to your colleagues in the wake of a parents' evening, and there's always one twit who, or at least one twit, who decides to lay into you. But I often find with my male colleagues, I kind of have either they're not telling me the truth. It's possibility number one, and they do get, or they're just people just like, certainly if I find if mothers are going in as well, they're not going for the male teacher.
It is quite interesting. I've not had a huge amount, because I find generally parents' evenings are the good kids, parents that want to come and chat and find out how good they are, and the ones that are difficult and not doing so well do not turn up. But I have had, like, quite early on in my career, I had a male parent that their child was getting A's in everything else and were getting a D in art, because they literally do a flower like circle and petals, and went, I've done it. I'm like, that's GCSE art, that's not going to cut it. And they didn't quite kind of understand that, and they just went in on me quite aggressively, to the point where my head of department was the other side of the room and he had to step in. And I am a bit like, would he have done that I don't think he'd have spoken to a male teacher like that. No, I think it was because I was female. He felt like he could intimidate me into kind of saying that I was wrong and actually his daughter's grade should have been higher. When I then went, whilst the head of department was kind of dealing with it, he went, go get her book now. And I went and got it, and I went and got an A student and then explained the difference. And then he kind of soon, once he saw it, was like, oh, okay. But he never apologized for kind of literally kind of being quite aggressive and shouty in my face. And I don't know. I know that there are things that happen like that, and I don't think it happens overly often, but I do quite often get, oh, I want to talk to somebody more senior kind of thing as well. And it's like, well, like, I can deal with this. You don't need to speak to
Knee
anybody
high.
else. You don't need to speak to the head. I can do this and make this happen. And to be honest, if you speak to me, it's more likely to happen than go up to people that have got more things better to do with their day. It's
The undermining is real.
yeah.
That's the word I was searching for. It's the undermining, because I don't get the sense that happens to my, excuse me, hiccuping again, to my male colleagues, because they just wouldn't dare. There just seems to be more of an automatic respect. Like
And do you find it with students as well? Because I know you mentioned this in weekly review.
So this is something that we, is coming up a lot at the moment. Actually, I found an article on this when I was in my research rabbit hole, as you were this week as well. Let me just find it. This is from 2022, but the survey that was conducted found that 72% of female teachers have experienced misogyny at their schools, and it's reported from various sources, including students, senior leadership, and colleagues. And then all the kind of influences that go with it. This was actually an NAS UWT survey a couple of years ago. So again, there is an awareness, or has been an awareness for a while, and even predating 2022, let's be honest, that this is going on. And the response, of course, and this even goes higher up. So not only are schools struggling to deal with an increase in misogyny from the students themselves, but while the government acknowledges the need for action against abuse and proper training for staff, the survey indicates that many cases of misogyny and harassment in schools are not adequately addressed, with some reports dismissed or ignored. And they are dismissed or ignored because it's, people don't want to, again, approaching a teenage boy or young boy's parents about this. It's awkward. It is awkward, particularly when you have to, often relay some of the colourful language, which we will not repeat, that's used as well. You don't want to be having that conversation. No one wants to be having that conversation. But also, again, it's, if you're a woman phoning a parent and explaining this, particularly if it's happened to you directly, that is an emotional thing. That is an aggressive thing. That is an invasion of so many things. So to then have to, deal with it on top of that, and then kind of receive well, that's not that bad, or well, what, or well, kind of, okay, whatever, which often you do, even from management as well. It's kind of, okay, so what? I'm just supposed to take the abuse, am I? I'm just supposed to kind of, not try and instill in them that actually, you probably wouldn't speak to your mother, your sister like that. So why would you speak to me like that?
I've got a friend who early on in her teaching career had a student say that they were going to follow her home and rape her. And that student had a conversation and then was back in her class the next day. And I just think that kind of thing is, oh, they didn't mean it, they were only joking. I think it's horrific. Like that kind of threat should be taken seriously and treated in the same way. And I think there's a lot of that. And I know we had this issue with like kind of violence in schools last year, and it was very much talk. If they were to do that out in the big wide world, that would be a whole different ball game of how that would be reported and handled by the police. But in schools, it's perfectly acceptable to treat a female member of staff in that way. And it's not okay. It's not okay to feel that way and feel unsafe in that kind of environment, and then have to walk the halls, and let alone be in the school with them, but to teach them, to be in your class. It's not, that wouldn't be accepted. And I do believe if it was something, the male equivalent, no, that would have come down like a ton of bricks, and it's not acceptable. And it is that I had a few years ago, I had a year 7 lad, was giving it the big one in my lesson. I said, look, I've been doing this job for a very long time. Like, if you don't want to get on the wrong side of me, like, ask any of the other kids in the school. You want me to have your back. That's how this school works. I generally help all the difficult kids, and they like hanging out with me. So you don't want me to dislike you and not want you to be in my classroom. To which his response was, Andrew Tate. And I'm just like, how and why is that a response? And just like, I was like, right, you can get out now. But it's just the fact that they think that that's an adequate response or a way to speak to a woman. Again, nothing raised it, nothing happened. And it's like, that is not an appropriate way to speak to a woman. It's not okay to speak to a woman in these kind of ways. And it certainly isn't okay to speak to a teacher that way. But we're kind of just expected that we're meant to take it in that respect. And that kind of tone, or any kind of messages that are said like that, or even sworn out, that actually it's not that bad. But if they do it to a male teacher, I feel like they come down way harder
Oh gosh, yeah.
than if they do it to
And
a
they're,
female teacher.
less likely to do it. And I've kind of gone back and forth with Mr. Brent Poland on this, where I've said, you go into a room and you turn puce and kind of come down on them. They're going to, oh God, okay, I do that. It's not going to get the same reaction. I'm 5'3". I'm not, I am a big character when I teach, but I kind of stand on furniture and all sorts of things. But I'm, if I've got, I mean, there's a reason I teach in primary. If I've got a 6 foot lad towering over me, kind of, you best believe I'm going to be scared, and I'm going to fear for my safety. And I like to think I can stand up for myself to an extent. And of course, we're not sitting here saying, oh, we need someone to come and rescue us. We need someone to kind of fight for us. We're not saying that. We can stand up for ourselves. We do the jobs that we do because we have, we're forthright enough. We have enough presence and enough wherewithal, qualified up to the eyeballs, whatever you want to call it. We put ourselves in these situations. We know what we're doing. But it would be nice just to have you on side. It would be nice to just be like and this goes for parents too. And I talk a lot about how I want, more cohesive between communities and between families and schools. But, that goes both ways. That goes, I need you to kind of be on side. Same with, management and all the rest of it. If I come to you and I am visibly upset, or I tell you something has happened, I don't necessarily know what I want from you in that moment, or what kind of action I want you to take, but I want to know you're going to do something. I want to know that I can come into work and not feel threatened. Thank you very much. I want to know that, that there is a that whatever action is taken, the message is loud and clear that this will not be tolerated. Because you see signs everywhere, whether it's in police stations or London Underground, whatever it is, hospitals, pretty much anywhere you walk into that says assault or verbal abuse of staff will not be tolerated. Yet it seems to be tolerated, the tolerance seems to be a very sort of grey area in terms of schools. And don't get me wrong, I do think that male staff, and I've got male secondary teachers who are friends of mine who have experienced horrific abuse as well. But from the female side, it does feel a bit like we're just kind of, it'll be fine.
Yeah, and I think it's that, like, we don't want to just be called emotional because we got upset by something that's happened to us. We want to feel listened to and heard. We don't necessarily need you to do something, but we need to know that you've taken it on board and the same thing won't happen again. And I think that seems to be, for me, quite a big trend, that these women are like getting emotional and getting upset because these are happening over and over again, and people just aren't listening and aren't responding. And I find it quite interesting because obviously I oh gosh, it's 2 years ago almost that I broke my foot and then got my DVT and my pulmonary embolism. So I used to live in heels because I really liked having the height over the teenage boys because I teach the teenage boys. I liked being taller than them and the clink of the heels would like maybe put a little shiver down their spine that they know I'm coming. But like since doing that, and the kids all joke, they would all come up to me and be like, "Oh, Miss, you're well short now." But also with the lungs and being affected as well, I've lost my projection. I'm not as got such a prominent voice, and I've really noticed that actually that's really changed the way the kids kind of react to me. Whereas before it'd be like if I raised my voice in any way, shape, or form, it'd be like, "Oh my god, we heard about that," and the kids would be telling me, "We heard that you had a go at that kid, Miss." Like it was such a rare thing because I felt they all respected me. That when it did happen, there was a real kind of shockwaves. But now I just feel like it's a lot less of that, like that it is kind of they don't, and it's that I give the sanction and they're going to argue their way back, whereas I feel like quite often if a man was to give the sanction they wouldn't argue back, or that's unfair, miss. Oh, that's not what happened, miss, I didn't do that, that's so unfair, that's so unfair. And it's like, would you be complaining like this if sir had given it to you? I don't know. I don't feel like you would. I feel like I never hear a man in the staff room go, "Oh, I gave this kid a sanction and they complained about it." But I do hear women saying it a huge amount. And I just feel like is that you can tell a woman that they're wrong. You can tell, like, it's just a normal thing to do.
It's just, I mean, the thing is, I don't want to feel, and this is less of an issue in certainly in the primaries that I've with maybe with the exception of one, but less an issue in primary. But teachers, and certainly female teachers, like, you don't want to feel like you're going into battle every day. You don't want to feel like you're having to don the proverbial armor because you know kind of what you're walking into. And the idea that, okay, so you're not getting the support from management, to then kind of get the sort of the back chat, the abuse from your students as well. And so you end up in this situation again. It's no wonder that we are leaving in our droves, and we are, and a lot of women are leaving the profession or are having to step away because there's no wiggle room anywhere. Like, there's no, whether it is the flexibility, whether it is the support from co-workers and management, whether it is, the support when it comes to dealing with difficult students. And so you end up in quite a sad, and we've got to bring it down before we bring it back up again. But I also think, and I'm going to say something, maybe it's not that controversial, but I almost think in terms of teacher training, and I often come back to teacher training because it is one of my many peeves in this profession, in this world that we exist in. I have many things that I love, but I also have many peeves. I think our teacher training for women needs to start looking a bit different. I think the crux of it's the same. Like, teacher training is teacher training. Okay, fine. But I think for women, it does need to look a bit different. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, Hannah, or if you think that I'm maybe going too far here.
No, I agree, but I also think, like, just thinking about what we were chatting about, I think when we don't want backup, like, we can fight our battles, because I do find it a bit like when a male teacher walks in and they're suddenly silent, and it makes you feel like, I did have hold of this, but now I feel like they respect you more than they respect me, and I've lost my confidence. Like, I feel like there should be a better way to handle it or to support each other, and I can't quite work out kind of where it is. But I think it is, like, it's the little things. It's picking up when you hear conversations in the corridor and it's like, no, you don't speak to women like that. That's not how we talk. And I think it goes back to, I remember doing one of my placements at a private school, and at the time they were doing a whole load of research about language used in school, and it was all about kids using the word gay, and they like that kind of, oh my god, that's so gay, and kind of that. And they'd surveyed the kids whether they heard it, and the kids did hear it. And but one of the questions was, how often do you hear teachers pick up on it? And it was a really low percentage, and the kids obviously all heard it, but I am going back a bit, I don't think it's used as much, but that teachers didn't correct it. And I was in my teacher training year, so I was 3 years in, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'd never really thought about that. And it really changed the way I was in my class. So all the schools that I've gone to since, if I hear a kid go, oh my God, that's so gay, I instantly pounce on them and correct them. And they never do it again in my class because they don't understand the connotations of it. But because I go in and I very firmly explain why that language is not acceptable in my classroom, and we do not insult people like that because of their gender or sexuality, and that is not okay to use an insult. And they've not really said it, really thinking about it. But me going in, they never say it again. And actually, it wasn't till somebody pointed out, have you heard this language in school? Have you heard teachers correcting it? And that wasn't even my school. I was literally just there on Fridays for a term. But it really made me think and change the way my practice is. So I don't know whether we need something like that in teacher training or in across schools that needs to come out. Where have you heard, asking the kids in your school, do a survey, because we haven't had one of those for a while. Ask the kids, do you hear X, Y, and Z, and list those kind of languages that's not acceptable to do, because we know that they're in there. We know, like my friend is a PhD lead, and I was chatting to her today. She was Googling kind of the new up-to-date slang that kids use. What did she tell me today? That apparently what was it? Oh, it was a really good one. Apparently
Riz, you have plenty
was,
of that.
Hannah, no, it's something like they use, I can't remember what it is. There was is it a cappella or something? They were using kind of music term to basically insult somebody for being autistic, and it was like a slang word for basically subtly saying in a class about somebody's autism. And I was like, God, I would have never known that. And I just like,
wow,
are we doing, like, obviously all the Andrew Tate stuff's filtered through. We had the lovely Mr. Pink or Pinkett the other week on Education Night talking about that kind of stuff. And I think that we do need to, as schools, be aware of the language. I do think the kind of derogatory language towards women is really strong in schools, and that kind of, I think it should be, if you argue with a female teacher about your sanction, that's instantly like a higher sanction,
and
like,
everyone needs to toe the path,
and not being like, oh, actually, or quite often when it's a hard send or something like that. Not at my current school. My current school's like really good on behaviour, but I've been at previous schools where it's like, or heads of year have referred them and gone, look, this needs to be a suspension. That kid swore at me. And it's like, oh, actually, like, we'll just put them in a day inclusion instead. It's like, no, like, it's not okay. We need to make sure that we're kind of really correcting this. And unless we correct it and really educate them and explain why it's not okay, it's not just being, oh, you can't say that. We need to actually explain it, give them the education, and kind of sort it out. I know JBL's on there. I mean, students use terms straight because it's the opposite, are bent or twisted or not helpful. It's exactly that. Like, I think we're at that point where we need to kind of think about that and kind of correct it. I'm actually talking in comments. We've had another one on Twitter. This is from Teach Tour. Expectations of parents are different for women and men, definitely lower for men. Mums feed into it as they swoon over men, but hold women to account on every little thing.
It hacks me off so much. Oh, who is it? Who said that? Sorry.
This was Teacher Tour. Teachers on Tour.
And they do, and it's all kind of, and it's, no, bloody stop it. And it is, and they do get away with it. Usually they are young chaps who aren't bad looking, let's be honest, a lot of the time. But
I'm in secondary, it's a different story. I mean, I love, no offense.
Sorry, guys, you really are getting the brunt of our I don't know, energy.
They're all intelligent and teachers, and that's enough for me.
Exactly. And I'm glad JBL's still sticking with us. He hasn't gone off completely. So he's still there loud and clear, and we appreciate you. But yes, the expectations are different. And I feel like, they do get away with being mediocre a lot of the time. Don't get me wrong, again, to caveat what I'm saying always, there are plenty of great male teachers out there, but I do think they get away with blue bloody murder compared to what we do. I don't know why. Why do you think it is?
I do wonder whether that they do pick up on things that we do wrong earlier, but also it's the same of kind of saying things as well, like, I'll just give them a bit more work, they'll do it. Like, do you know what I mean?
Thanks, Leanne.
It is though, isn't it? Like, I feel like we kind of, oh, just add it to their workload, they won't complain. I don't think we do. We moan, but I don't think we complain in a way that's taken seriously. Whereas I feel like if a male counterpart was to complain about the same thing, it would be taken slightly more seriously. Even like, I know that kind of at a previous school I was a wellbeing leader, and I raised the fact they put um what was it, report deadlines for 3-year groups on the day after parents evening. Now granted, we should all be well organized and have done those reports in plenty of time, but let's face it, we're
Sorry,
not
what?
angels.
What?
And we're all doing it the night before, so to try and do that on the back of a parents evening was hard work, or at least check them and do things and everything. But it's like, but then I think they didn't do anything about it, and the same thing happened the next year. But then a chap who happened to be a union rep, so I don't know whether that helped in his corner, I complained to him, and he raised it, and miraculously was looked into. So yeah,
It's really difficult.
and also I don't think we are as likely to go the union route, where I feel like men are like, well, check your union guidance. Like, I feel like they're more likely to go, no, we don't do that. Whereas I feel like women are more likely to go, yes, I'll do that. I know I shouldn't. I know it's wrong, and I know I shouldn't have to. But yeah, no problem. No problem. I'll get it done. And I think we also fall in that trap. We're quite often lured into the, if you do this role for free, this will look good in your CV, because they're not going to take you as a woman anyway. So you need all the help you can get. And we kind of go and do and give more of ourselves than perhaps what we should, when we've already got that extra mental load as well, with kind of, if you are coming back from maternity leave and doing those extra things and things. And like, we all know that the mental load is different for women to men, the way we think about things and the way we deal with things on a daily basis, let alone if you're like us and have ADHD and your brain's nuts. It's a lot to do. We love it, it's superpowers. But it is kind of
neurodivergent. God, we're covering a lot of bases here. So it's like, yeah, 2 neurodivergent women on Teachers Talk. We're doing it for a lot of groups this evening, and hopefully we're still employed. You never know. I think we're fine, but I suppose, you know, we've kind of gone sort of dark on a lot of this, and a lot of it is crap and is rubbish. But I suppose what I want to do in a desperate bid to, you know, end on some kind of high, where do we go from here? And I ask this a lot on a lot of shows, because, and I don't necessarily think there's a concrete answer to this. I think this is as the problem is multifaceted, the solutions are going to be, or the kind of the sort of way we kind of correct here is going to be multifaceted as well. But what do you think is the most kind of urgent side of this we need to deal with?
I do think it's kind of, it's having the men to back us and call out and say, you shouldn't be doing that, they shouldn't have asked you to do that.
Getting rid of that bystander.
We always feel guilty, and I do it, especially like younger teachers and things like that. I will openly go, you shouldn't be doing that. And I think it's both older teachers passing that wisdom to younger teachers, as well as male counterparts passing it along. I think we need to be a unit as a whole and stand up for each other, especially if you see a specific teacher doing more than what they should. That goes for both sides. But I do think generally kind of women will often be the one that will go help or do something extra when they haven't got hold of everything they're doing as it is. We're very kind of giving, but we need to kind of correct that and actually kind of stop doing the things that we're not getting paid to do, which I know is really difficult in teaching.
But I also think and in getting support from those colleagues, it's also, and maybe there's, I don't know how this will work, maybe there's room for sort of CPD, or even as part of training or something, where people, and I'm talking people in general now, understand how to support without undermining. It's a very delicate balance, and and of course people are always perceive things in different ways, and you're never going to please everybody. But I do believe there absolutely is a way to show support and solidarity with your colleagues, particularly your female colleagues, without kind of taking over, as we've talked about, undermining them, making them feel silly or any less competent than they are. So it's kind of, just sort of understanding that as well, I think is really important.
And I think it is that, like, kind of male leadership, understanding how their presence will change a room and change a dynamic. And actually, you're maybe not seeing the
That
best of that teacher in
self-awareness.
that moment. And actually, you may have kind of changed it. Now, I know that's really difficult. You have to be in the room, you have to go observe and all that stuff. But I think it's kind of really understanding that. But I think the big bit is calling out the student language and kind of how it is, and just back, and same with parents, and backing your staff. But the other bit, I think, is really listening and making sure that your staff feel heard, because I think being called emotional and overreactive and not actually feeling when really all we're doing is we've got to that point because nobody's heard or listened to us, and we get worse and worse and worse because nobody listened to us in the first place. And actually just making sure that that's there. And I know it's I haven't read into it enough on what's kind of flared up on Twitter as well with the whole NDAs and stuff. But I find that quite scary, that potentially, especially with this head teacher in Norfolk that got kind of arrested for harassing his ECT, like, there needs to make sure that we've got more in place to make sure that our female work colleagues are being treated the same way, are being looked into. So I know we like had a rant about Ofsted and kind of changing it. We're going to change the world, Lucy. It's fine.
Yes, one show at a time.
Do we need to, like, we need to have trust being held accountable and actually make sure that maybe we need to have that, the Ofsted staff survey, actually have that kind of maybe more looked at in that respect. Like, do you feel like you're treated fairly compared to the alternative sex counterparts, like things like that? Like, are we actually looking at schools as a whole? Because I definitely think I've been at a school before where a position was rumored to be coming up and somebody went, oh well, none of us will get it because we don't have balls. And it's that kind of atmosphere you don't really want. That shouldn't be something
That's
a
so
school is
sad
known
as
for.
well. How sad. But also forgot where my brain was going. It's flown away. No, it's coming back. So, but also, in addressing the language of students, this is not just a secondary thing. And I know I say this a lot, but when you were telling your story about the use of the word gay, I've had exactly the same situation. A girl came in rainbow trainers, and other girls said, "Oh, those are gay," and we had having to again approach that with primary students, because of course, I mean, as teachers in general, we're damned if we do and we're damned if we don't, but approaching that with appropriate language, with trying to understand, all of that, because I knew that if I didn't, that those parents were going to come after me. Whereas I wonder kind of how one of my male colleagues would have dealt with that. I don't know whether they would have kind of brushed it under the carpet because it was between two girls, or whether they would have dealt with it in the same way. It's difficult to know, and I suppose it would be unfair to assume what would happen in that case. But this dealing with language and understanding where these kids are at, and certainly keeping, we have to keep on the pulse as teachers. I mean, we have to kind of make sure we are on it. And I do think, making sure that those alliances with not only with management, but with parents are there too. We are on your side. And I don't know, again, whether it's kind of this women versus women thing, mothers versus female teachers. I don't know if there's sometimes a weird dynamic there, or if I'm reading too much into it. I'm not sure. Any thoughts on that?
I think there is, like, I think because we just find it so hard to, like, be taken seriously, that you do see if the other females are taken seriously, you see them as a threat potentially. But I just think it is like you said, you want to feel backed, but it's feeling heard and valued. So it's making sure that if a teacher sanctions a student or raises a concern with a student, that it's treated in exactly the same way, no matter which teacher it comes from, and then there's that consistency across it. And I think, like you said, I think there also needs to be added in that part of training, like in my apprenticeship, they had a little group called Women's Ed, and it was all about being 10% braver and taking those chances that we wouldn't normally take, and understanding that we are qualified and having faith in ourselves to go for things earlier, and also standing up for ourselves, verbally saying things, and like I've never can now negotiate a pay rise if I want to, or I try to at least, and then I cave and I'm yeah yeah I tried, but like but I would have never known that unless somebody had sat me down and explained it and told me that's what I should have done the first time. But then I got the bottle to do it, and I was told no, 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 and then the mail got it straight away. But like we need to teach and educate our women that are coming into education how to handle themselves, how to handle those situations, get ahead of it, and be like, when you're going for promotions, do this, do this, do this. Make sure
Yes.
you do this. Make sure that is followed up. Because I do think that like sometimes does take somebody to kick off. I have seen people kick off and be like, no, I said that kid, that based on the behavior policy, that kid should get suspended based on what they said to me. And if you don't, then I will get my unions involved, or this will happen. And like actually stand up for ourselves. Because quite often I think that is a lot of it as well, that we will just take it and we will lie down, as they say. And it's just like we need to stand up for ourselves. And especially like I know that there's been things with previously with as well pregnant teachers in classrooms. We quite often feel like you get that email when, oh, this kid's got this kind of infection, if you're pregnant then
Oh,
just stay away from them. And it's like, no, like if that teacher then wants to go home, don't make them feel guilty about going home. I remember having a pregnant member of my team when COVID started, and we didn't know what the effects were COVID, and they were absolutely petrified and still came into school, and I went, no, go work from home. I don't care. I don't care what anybody else in this school says. I'm your manager. I'm telling you to go for work from home. And when they've got their evidence that it's okay for you to be in school, then you can come back in school. But you're scared and petrified, and you're going to make the baby sick if you're this anxious, and it's not okay. And I think it is having the right people to fight your corner. But like I'm in the middle. Like I want leadership fighting for me how I fight for other people. And that's the thing. There needs to be people at the top. This needs to be put into leadership training, that people are opening their eyes. It's like that was that Netflix documentary where there were three different people, and they all like were on a fake trial, and they all had done the same crime. And like the good looking white man who was really attractive, they gave the least sentence to, whereas like the black man that looked a bit dodgy, they gave a really high sentence to. And it's bias, but it's unconscious bias for a lot
for
of
sure.
people.
I also think it's important here, in encompassing all of this, and in kind of, because to some people this may have sounded a bit like a feminist rant this evening, and I suppose in part it has been, which I think is fair enough. But also, the thing is, what we're getting at here is all we want. Well, I mean, I don't want to speak for you, Hannah, but the sense I'm getting is this is about fairness at the end of the day, because feminism is about wanting things fair, wanting things, wanting our seat at the table, wanting to be paid the same for doing the same, often more, but let's kind of one step at a time, getting treated in the same way, taken seriously, all of these things. No, we're not asking for above and beyond here. We're not asking for preferential treatment. We're not asking for anything other than what is fair. That's it. That's where it begins and ends here. And I think that's what gets lost in this a lot of time, and gets lost in the kind of ranting and raving that that we have been doing. Not in the ranting and raving we've been doing, but in general in the mix. I think it's kind of they're just being so entitled. They want this, they want that, they want that. No, it is just what is fair and what is right, and what any of our equivalents or any of our kind of colleagues would expect the same thing. It's no different. We're not asking for the moon on a stick. We're just asking to feel safe, respected, and paid the same at work. Please and thank you.
I think it's exactly that. We're not we yes, we've ranted a little bit, but we're not ranting because like we just want to moan and complain. We're ranting because we want people to see and shine a light on it, and make people understand kind of what exactly goes on, because I don't think we actually kind of rant and rave about it enough, because look at the pay gaps that are being announced. Like, it is still really big. I know it's coming down, but it's still really big for a profession that is mainly women. Like, it's we've got
And
huge
globally mainly women, which we haven't really touched on in this show, and it might be worth actually doing another show on this. But we have, you know, this is not a kind of white Western woman thing. There's way more to be said on this, but we will come back to this another time. Ooh, one of the nastiest things that ever happened to me in my career was a female deputy head accused me of something I haven't done. Oh, wow. She left a nasty disciplinary note in my mailbox on a Friday afternoon as she was leaving the school. I have never checked my mailbox on Fridays ever since. It was calculated and cruel. I could never respect her. Interesting.
Because it does happen the other way, because that's the thing. It's about having the right people in leadership that know how to lead people and in every aspect of the way, and do it in a kind, and I think it is like that the thing, isn't it? You need to make people feel heard and listened to and valued and encouraged. Like, this shouldn't be an industry where we're putting people down and making people feel belittled and small and underappreciated and underqualified when they clearly are as well. Like, it's one of those that it needs to have a shift, especially with the rate that women are leaving education. And like you said, like, it is globally as well. Like, women in education are not kind of thought of in a high regard, and that are not treated necessarily the best for that. But then there are places that do it really well, and I think it is just changing the narrative, changing the language and calling it out, but also just thinking and making us more conscious of it. Like, I do genuinely think, like, if a female has applied for that job, really have a look at their CVs and really look at what they put in their application, rather than just going off what the chat that's in the interview, because I think that we are so much more than 30 minutes or an hour kind of chat. And I think that we as women as well do not blow our own trumpets. We do not make ourselves kind of big ourselves up. We doubt ourselves and we put ourselves down and we make ourselves feel small.
Try not to take up space.
Yeah, exactly that. And I think, like, actually women in education have just as much space to take up as anybody else, and
I think we're living proof of that. Toot our horn, kind of thing.
But
bit of a boost. Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. I have no notes on that, so I'm going to be quiet and choose that as a point to bring this show to a close. I mean, there is so much more we could do and say on this. There is the international perspective, which maybe we'll have a chance to look at another time. I certainly did some very interesting research into women in crisis, in countries in crisis and things like that, and sort of the shortage there. And certainly countries where women are not treated or aren't afforded the same privileges and lifestyle that we are. So I do think that is absolutely worth looking into. We just haven't got that far this evening. So please, if you're sitting there thinking, well, this was all very sort of, narrow, it wasn't. It was actually very expansive. And, we're sitting here saying there is more to be said. There's always more to be said, but we are operating within a certain time frame.
I've got one more tweet though, Lucy.
Come on, go for it.
Well, this is another perspective that we haven't actually talked about, so I'm going to throw it in at the end. This is Alan. He said, sorry to say, yes, from my experience, sadly, over 10 plus years I've worked in schools. Some families seem to find it hard to accept a man should be content to work for or with senior colleagues who are female, preferring to speak to me instead of my line managers. So I find that quite interesting as well, that male colleagues also feel like they can't respect female line managers and will skip and dance around that as well. So again, that's something that can be called out when people see it and kind of go, no, they're your manager, you need to speak to them. I've certainly had that where I've had staff members go beyond me and go straight above me, and I'm like, why are you wasting that time? That's a question for me. And why is the male counterpart the other way not going, why didn't you just ask your line manager? She knows the answer and that's what she's there for. So it's a two-way street as well on that one. But I thought that was an interesting point that we haven't covered. Throw it in for the last minute.
No, I know you squeaked that one in there, but very, very interesting. And maybe
I'm trying to get us. We've almost got 1,600 people kind of listening in live. to our lovely little rant. So I was
We've
like,
done well. I think that's our highest view count so far. So we've done well. Oh yeah, we've crossed the 1600 barrier there.
yay!
So so thank you everybody. We hope that it's
Hopefully
been
Tom will let us on again, and you guys are enjoying mine and Lucy's like new Tuesday rants. We think we need a name, so if anybody comes up with a maybe, I don't think Ranty Tuesdays is quite a ring to it, but if you're enjoying our shows or have any topics you want us to chat about, or even want to come and join us a guest, then you can do. Or even better, maybe us having a little chat and talking about all the good and the bad of education through our shows. You want to become a host yourself, so we've got a few hosting spots available, so do drop us a DM over on Twitter or LinkedIn if you'd be interested in that, because I highly recommend it, because it makes me think about education in a different way and so many different areas. And actually, it's the best CPD you possibly can do doing Teacher Talk Radio, because I properly reflect and think about things on a daily basis that I would never have thought I would have kept all of this in. It would have been in me, and I'd have felt very small and would never have said any of this out loud if I hadn't done Teacher Talk Radio. But that's a good thing. I'm sure it was. I hope everyone's enjoyed the show so far.
I was just checking to see if anyone's on after us. They're not, so we're all right. So that is it, unfortunately, for your Teachers Talk radio content this evening. Thank you once again to our delightful sponsors, to John Catt Educational and to Future Careers as well. Do make use of that John Catt discount. It is JCTTR2425. Still getting you 20% off. Still keeping you in check with all that CPD. So do go and have a look. There is such a broad range, and treat yourself to some fantastic books. We will be back next week. We'll let you know what we're talking about when we decide what we're talking about. But until then, thank you, Hannah. This has been great as always. And we will see you again next week.
You've been listening to Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live and listen back at ttradio.org. We look forward to hearing from you next time on Teachers Talk Radio.